Today is going to get a little bit spicy, and it's because I've had too many conversations lately about touch points across the subscriber journey, or frankly, lack thereof.
I think any podcast episode where things get a little spicy is good because that means that we have a serious topic to address.
Yes, and some serious thoughts to bring to this, hopefully. And I'm going to add a little bit of a caveat here at the beginning and as we get into the conversation today. And I want to just say, we're not calling out a specific provider. This is something that is really an industry problem. And it's something that, Zach, I think you and I see very consistently in the conversations that we have with folks across the industry, a lot of these same pervasive issues. Now, not all providers are thinking, are struggling with some of these things. We do have a lot of progressive providers that are moving down a more virtuous path. But I, again, see a lot of providers with room for improvement around some of these specific topics that we're going to go through today.
Gabe, I think this is going to be a fantastic topic. And it kind of got me thinking of a side story. And I have to start the podcast out with this because I had been looking at this, it's called a comma. I don't want to call it like a self-driving AI component for your car, but you can plug it into a lot of cars and it does the lane keeping on the highways. Use it as your own risk there, but
not an endorsement of said product.
One of the things that has driven me crazy about this company is I have been looking at this specific product for well over 6 months since I bought my car. I have been to their website numerous times, and I've had this thing sitting in my cart on numerous occasions as well. Yet there's been zero marketing nudging me or reminding me to buy. So as we think about like the buyer flow, that it's a story I meant to tell you earlier this week and to see if we could bridge it into a podcast.
That's a great
episode.
Example.
But this company has had nothing but 6 months of opportunity to say, hey, this prospect or this potential customer has been researching us, has been looking at our website, has our product in his cart. But for some reason, they haven't bought. How do we nudge them? How do we, get him to check out? None of this has taken place. And it doesn't tie, directly in here to what we'll be talking about today with the buyer flow, but it is a component of it. It's a component of that.
I think it actually does, Zach. And it's a really good example.
More so than I let on.
Yeah, no, I think it really does. And we're going to talk about acquisition use case here in a second. And I'll put a pin in that for just a moment and come back to it when we're talking about the acquisition timeframe, because I totally agree with you that I think there's a great opportunity to nudge. Nudge is a perfect word, to nudge people along that buyer journey at the beginning of that relationship. And the other part that we wanted to talk through today is, and Zach, you know me, this is where I get all excited to talk about the financial impacts of some of this stuff. But this is not just a conversation about the customer journey. It's a conversation about the financial impacts of not having meaningful touch points across the customer journey. And when I look at our business, or the business that most of our customers, most of the listeners to this podcast operate in, it's the broadband business. Well, what are the 3 ways that you can make money in the broadband business? You can get new customers, you can keep your existing customers, or you can get your customers to buy new things. That's kind of it.
Do you want to share which one of those is the most expensive too while we're on the subject?
Well, it's the first one I said, getting new customers. Getting new customers is always going to be more expensive than keeping the customers that you have, or getting your existing customers to buy new and different things. So this leads us into our first topic here, Zach, which is, this is the area where the majority of our industry focuses, and that is the start of the journey. If we think about a customer journey and all of the different touch points, and there's that acquisition and awareness phase, that's where the majority of time and effort goes within our industry.
And Gabe, to your point at the beginning of the podcast, not calling anyone out, but working in success, this is something I see on a daily basis. I see so much time and effort going into, acquiring a customer, but then it's like, okay, well, what's next? Because now we're done with this. And I'm like, well, are you done with that? Because you're not.
Correct. You're not. And I want to talk about some of these other touch points, but we put a pin in something that you mentioned earlier around this. You said it was Comma, right? Comma AI, the one for your car.
Yes.
So they've had your information. You've said you've put it in your cart. They've never sent you an abandoned cart email. They've never sent you any touch point to try and nudge you along that purchase process. This is an area where I think there's a ton of opportunity for broadband service providers. What do we see? We see the vast majority of the time when you go to a broadband service provider website, what do you do when you go to that site? They force you to put in what in order to see the service tiers that are being offered?
You've got to put in that address, Gabe.
There you go. So you've got to put in that address. You've got to provide them some information so they know what services they can offer to you. And even can they offer service at your specific address? I have had, I don't even know how many conversations, dozens, hundreds, a lot with broadband service providers over the years about this particular touch point. Very, very few, I can probably count them on one hand, of providers track the addresses that people input into those tools and retarget people, whether that's retargeting with a direct mail postcard, if you're asking for their email address, whether that's retargeting them with an email after the fact. Very, very few do that and retarget those people. Very similar to what you were talking about with the Comma product.
You're going to get me all riled up here, Gabe, because we did a whole episode about a year ago on zero party data that your customers or your prospects willingly give you. And if someone is willingly giving you a service address, that's like the easiest thing to say, okay, well, yes, this became a customer, or no, what can we do to nudge them? But if they're willingly giving you that data and you're not doing anything with it, that is nothing but a missed opportunity.
100%. And let's just use a very simple example there. Let's say once a month, you pull the list of all of those addresses that have been input into that database, and you send to that group of people a direct mail postcard. I can pretty much guarantee you that the conversion rates on that are going to be a heck of a lot higher than just carpet bombing a brand new area of new subscribers who have no idea who you are. It's so wasteful to me to not leverage that information. You're absolutely right, Zach. It's that zero party, first party data that somebody has given you. You have to leverage it. Yeah.
It's funny because, just to give you another example here, Gabe, there is one specific piece of mail that I get more than anything. And yes, I am the Gen Z person who uses the USPS app to see what's in my mailbox. So I don't actually have to, go down and check it out. But it's always the same, big national BSP. You're just blanketing with mail. It's been the same mailer for, 2+ years now since I switched to the fiber provider. And had a great experience with them. But the funniest part of this whole thing, Gabe, to me, is the fiber provider I have never once received any marketing from them. Like I have never once gotten anything in the mail. They know I'm a customer, number one. I gave them my address when I signed up, and that's it. This, big national provider, every week, I think at one point, Gabe, I think I sent you, 5 to 7 mailers in a 1 week. They dropped the price as low as $9 for a while, but they just keep doing this blanket stuff. And if they did any research here, they'd probably know that I've never been to their website. I have never given them any information. I'm very satisfied with my existing provider, but they just keep wasting that marketing money on those direct mailers. So again, going back, what's the best practice here? Use that zero party data you have.
Yep, it's a great point. And this hits on something else you said there that I want to dig into. So you mentioned that you've never gotten any marketing or any communication really from your current provider, except billing touch points. This is the thing that we see all the time. Billing touch points are the only regular engagement that most subscribers have with their broadband service provider. And what that does is, over time, that builds resentment. And we see it in the net promoter scores that we look at for our customers. Many of our customers do net promoter score surveys, and I'm going to talk about NPS a little bit more in a minute because this is another thing that drives me crazy. But on the NPS side, net promoter score is a very simple question. For anybody who doesn't know what it is, it's simply how likely are you to recommend our service to your friends or family? It's that simple question. And then it's measured 0 to 10. 8s, 9s, and 10s are considered promoters. What is it? 6s and 7s are considered neutral, correct? I'm saying this
Passives,
correct.
yeah.
Passives, thank you. I said that and then I didn't, and then I I was questioning myself. And then anything below that is considered a detractor. And so you actually can have a negative NPS score if you have more detractors than promoters. And frankly, we see a lot of large national providers with those negative NPS scores. The thing I want to talk about around NPS is not a transactional score. It's a relationship score. If you're measuring NPS at a specific touch point in the relationship, say at time of install, and I just heard somebody in a meeting I was in last week say this, they were talking about how their NPS was fantastic. We've got an NPS of 90. And once we pulled the thread a little bit, we found out that actually that NPS score is really a CSAT score. They were asking the customer about the experience that they had at the time of install. The time of install is probably pretty good. As long as your technicians are doing a good job, providing that good experience, you're likely going to get a good score. That is not an NPS score. NPS score needs to be asked of all customers, the people that have been here for 6 years. And like Zach, haven't heard anything from you in those 6 years, except for you taking money out of their bank account.
It's very transactional. And Gabe, to build off that too, another one I see quite often is the email of, I told you about when I had to call my BSP to change my address. What happened, minutes after I got off the phone? Well, I got the CSAT email to rate them. That is not NPS. So it's a good thing to call out the differences here, because I think that that is another great example of a survey that's not quite a relationship NPS.
Yeah, I'm not saying a CSAT score is a bad idea to track. You should be tracking CSAT.
Valuable, yeah.
100%. See which technicians are doing a great job. See which ones maybe have room for improvement.
See Same where you can improve as an operationally as well. There's so much data you can collect in a 100%. CSAT survey.
Yes, 100%. Or when the customer calls in, like you said, right? Getting that CSAT score of, did I actually solve the problem? Did the service rep actually solve that issue for you? And were they courteous? And all the things that we would want to know as a business. That's great information. It's not NPS. And if you're trying to track that as an NPS score, it's just incorrect. It's not right.
Gabe, another thing we talk about quite a bit is churn. And I know this is a subject that you like to geek out on. So I'm actually going to ask you the question here, but let's talk about churn rates and average subscriber tenure a little bit.
Yeah, let's do it. So yes, this is an area that I get very passionate about around customer lifetime value and churn just in general. But if your churn rate is 1%, which is something that we hear pretty commonly with many of the customers that we work with, that means that on average, your subscribers are staying around for 8.3 years. So if you say that differently, if your churn rate's 1%, then you turn over 100% of your subscriber base on average over that 8.3 years. A lot can happen over 8.3 years. People's needs change. The world changes. All of these things happen that if you're not thinking about how your subscribers' needs are changing over that time frame, you're going to be leaving them behind, and you're also going to be leaving money on the table, to go back to the financial conversation.
Gabe, this is something we often talk about with what Wi-Fi systems are in your home. Because if you have a Wi-Fi system that's 10 years old, 20 years old, I always say, look at the technology changes, not only in your own life, but just from the products you use. Look how that's changed. I don't know, Gabe, do you have any smart appliances? Because I feel like every appliance in my kitchen now is Wi-Fi connected.
Yes, anything you buy. The last time I bought a space heater, it had Wi-Fi in it, for goodness sake. So like everything has Wi-Fi connected in it.
And we talked about this on another call today, but my sprinkler system, my air conditioner, I don't think there's my electric blanket has Wi-Fi. These are things that, 8 years ago in this churn example may not have been, adopted by the masses. But now, if you go and look up kitchen appliances or, air conditioners, everything is connected to some extent. A lot happens, Gabe. 8 years ago, I don't know where you were at in life, but I, of course, was studying for my next college exam. I was back in my prime, of course, but my internet needs were much different than they are today.
No question. And that's the big part of this, is those needs change over time. I just have to go back to your electric blanket comment. I'm just picturing you like, on a Saturday night, sitting there with your electric blanket, watching some movie on your couch, like a 100-year-old lady. It just makes me laugh.
This is And if I ever get a brand deal, this will probably be where it comes from. But this is the best smart home product I have ever purchased. So much so, I will be buying a second one. And
Wow. All right. High
it's funny
praise.
because, well, like in 3 months, Gabe, it's going to be 20 below here. I'll be,
Good
6 feet
point.
in with snow. But, when you're out downtown or, out around buying groceries or wherever you're at, and you can preheat your bed from your phone. I mean, that's, what else could you want in a winter?
I mean, yeah, honestly, that does seem like a pretty good use case. I might need to get one of these for my wife because she's constantly cold during the wintertime. So even though it's not really technically cold here,
I
especially in comparison.
We're gonna have to just kind of like gloss over that comment here because I'm looking at my background
Uh,
right now behind a podcast video, Gabe, and it's the Teton Mountains, and it's a picture I took just in July, and of course it's still snow capped. So um,
yeah, little
um,
different lifestyles that we live. All right, let me bring this back. So the churn piece of this is really important, right? Thinking about, how long those customers are sticking around on average and all of those changes that happen. Extending that, thinking about launching new services or upgrades to your existing customers. One of the questions that I often ask of providers is, what do you think a good upgrade rate is for your subscribers on an annual basis? And most of the time, I get an answer somewhere around 10%. I think we can upgrade 10% of our subscribers over the next year. If you
I
think
love
about that,
this. I love this, Gabe, because I think this is like one of the first things you and I talked about when I started at Calix. Like I will never forget this conversation. So everyone listening on the podcast right now, this is a great time to pay attention.
okay, so yes, if you've been nodding off and doing something else, now is the time to listen. If you upgrade 10% of your subscribers per year, then your subscribers are on a 10-year upgrade cycle. We just talked about all of the changes that happen over 8 years. Think about what's happened in over 10 years and how much technology has changed in the last 10 years. How much is technology going to change in the next 10? We are in this crazy age of AI where things are rapidly moving. The technology that we're using in 8, 9, 10 years is going to be dramatically different from the technology that we're using today. So if you're not going out and really having these conversations with your customers, going back to our 3 simple examples, what are the ways to make money in this business? Get new customers, keep your customers, get your customers to buy more or better things. This is that last example. Getting my customers to buy more or better things than what they bought when they originally signed up for my service maybe 8 years ago.
And looking into the financial impact of this a little bit, Gabe, this is a conversation we hear a lot as well. Of course, with our conversations is we added 300 subscribers over the past month. And then you ask the next question, it's, well, we lost 280 subscribers in the last month. So their subscriber count's going up, but at what cost?
Yeah, exactly. I feel like oftentimes this comes up in conversations and people are like, well, we're adding subscribers. And then everybody does a victory lap around the building, right? But in reality, this is a terrible way to run a business. If I'm losing, in this example, 280 subscribers and adding 300, yes, my subscriber count is going up. But to go back to what we talked about previously, it is so much more expensive to acquire a new customer than it is to keep the one that you have. In our business, in the broadband service provider space, cost of acquisition is really high. It's one of the higher cost of acquisition industries out there. Costs a lot of money. You got to market to people a lot. You got to send a technician out there to do the install if you're doing that white glove service. You see a lot of situations where people are giving gift cards or promotions or whatever, right, to get people excited to sign up. I'm not a huge fan of gift cards, but point being, a lot of people are doing that. But the point is, to go back to this 280 versus 300 conversation, this is why it's so important to look at the gross number and not the net number. What are my gross losses? What are my gross ads? Not just, well, I had 1,000 customers today and I've got 1,020 customers tomorrow. Yay, let's all take a victory lap around the building because we added subscribers. There's a lot that can be happening under the surface there that can potentially identify significant red flags around your business.
All I can imagine right now is Tim Cook on the next earnings call coming out and saying, we sold 10 million iPhones. Oh, and by the way, 9 million people switched to Android. Like it's the same conversation of,
it's a perfect corollary.
I think you said it best there, Gabe, gross versus net. Which metric should you be focusing on? I think Gabe, again, like I said, that's a conversation I'll never forget. And it's something we have with customers all the time.
We hear this conversation from customers all the time. And again, going back to we focus, a lot of the conversation in our industry focuses around acquisition. I'm not saying acquisition isn't important. It absolutely is. We all want to get more customers, but let's be thoughtful about who we're targeting, how we're targeting them, what services actually make sense for them. And if we're also really thinking deeply about what are the touch points that we have with our existing customers, then we're not have this massive base of people falling out the back end, that leaky bucket that we have to then replace with new customers. It's this vicious cycle, right? Where we see this a lot, where people focus so much on acquisition because of the leaky bucket. And in reality, it would probably be a lot better to focus on that existing base rather than throwing a whole bunch of good money after acquiring subscribers versus focusing on the ones that they have.
So, Gabe, end of the podcast here. What
I don't want to be like a bummer. I feel like this has been like such a bummer conversation. So
I know.
I don't want it to just be a bummer.
Critiqued everyone.
Yeah. So yes, going back to the beginning of the conversation, I feel like I'm throwing a lot of shade in this podcast, and I'm not trying to call out a specific provider. This is something that Zach and I see pervasively in our industry in so many of the conversations that we deal with. But what should be done? Let's talk about some positive stuff, because this doesn't need to just be, let's just continue with the status quo in our industry. What are the things that we need to do to actually improve this?
This could be like a Family Feud episode now, Gabe. And I'll ask you the question, but when should communication stop after an install?
Never.
It shouldn't stop. Exactly. It does not stop. Gabe, you mentioned the customer journey. It's a journey, like keep going.
Yeah, exactly. And it drives all the way through to loyalty, even after that customer has left you, potentially reaching out, with if they go to a large national provider who has significant promotional discounts for a period of time. After that period of time has lapsed, it's a great opportunity to go back and restart that conversation with the customer again. So even if they've left you, that conversation never really stops, or it shouldn't stop.
Gabe, I have a fun story on that note. I have a friend and they have the same fiber provider that I had. And then they moved to a new house, which didn't have service yet, right? So they're still an advocate. They're still out there recommending this fiber brand, this fiber provider, patiently waiting for them to complete the construction or finish that build. But they often talk about it. This is a friend of mine who's not even in the industry, yet they're talking about like, oh, I can't get them yet, but if you can get them at your address, do it now. They've become a brand advocate for a service they can't even buy. And I think that ties right into this.
That's a perfect example. And I love that, right? Even after they've left, they're still advocates, they're still building loyalty, and they're still out there, in this case, actually trying to sell service for you. So it's a great reminder of why you want to make sure all of those touch points across that entire journey, even the disconnect. It's like if somebody is calling, and that's a situation where they just had a disconnect because they moved, right? They're not upset with the service. Reminder to make that a pleasant experience too, which actually sort of leads us nicely into this next topic, Zach, which is something that we talked about this with John Pico when we did the episode with him. And I loved that episode. It was so great. I saw some of his stuff recently pop up on my LinkedIn, and it just reminded me how good that episode was. And
hold on, Gabe. Can you tell us what company he was working with? Because I feel like we have to name drop it.
We do. We do have to talk about this. So I know Zach was very jealous when he saw what John Pico got to do. He got to go present to all of the owners of Crumble stores. And I was like, oh man, I saw that. And I went, Zach's got to be so mad about this that he doesn't get to go have these conversations.
I was ecstatic. I was jealous. I was feeling a lot, but it goes back. Gabe, we just did the first episode of Buffering Ping we did was all about the Crumble experience. And what we talked about was how this non-broadband company is crushing it in the customer experience game. So to see, John Pico, of course, go on stage and talk to this company, I think it was the franchisees of this company.
Yeah,
I think it was just a great way to reinforce how important customer experience is. And on that customer experience note we did with Crumble, with Ping, again, I think one of the things we often do, Gabe, is we say, look outside your industry. What are other people doing? Yes, Crumble is in a very different industry than broadband, of course, unless you have like a broadband cookie shop. I would visit. Tell me, drop a comment. I will be there.
Uh,
But I think there's a lot of valuable lessons you can learn about with some of these other organizations as well. And again, just going back to your
100%.
point, um, with customer experience, and this is something I thought of with my BSP, is what should that regular touch point be? Should it be a bill? For me right now, I will be honest, it is a bill right now. I see it in my inbox, and there it is. I don't get a paper bill or anything. But the only time I've called my BSP was when I needed to move. I really haven't had any interaction with them. Now I will say, when you're out around town at the farmers market, they'll have a tent up and they're out in the community. And I think that's also a valuable touch point we should be considering is you
Totally.
are the local provider. You are the local trusted company. You're the great guy when you compare to, some of these national players and so on. So I think that's another touch point that if you're active in your community, just again, great opportunity there to have a great touch point.
Yeah, 100%. And to as a reminder for everybody with the John Pico thing, his quote, and I hope I don't screw this up, but it's, if you are striving to satisfy your customers, you are on the one-way ticket to the business graveyard. And it's provocative for a reason. But he's so right. If all we're striving for is satisfaction, then we're not striving for something better. And one of the things really specifically that we talked about with him in that episode was the bill. And we actually got an example of a bill to send to him so he could kind of do a bit of an analysis to be like, well, what does this even mean? How would I improve this? And, I'm not saying that the only touch point should be the monthly bill. It is a regular touch point, and you should absolutely take this as an opportunity to improve the experience of what a bill looks like. Make sure it's transparent. Make sure people understand exactly what they're paying for. Maybe, there's lots of different ways that you can make this better, but it's a great opportunity it's a great reminder, I should say, that there's an opportunity to improve even those quote unquote mundane touch points on a regular basis.
And the last thing here, Gabe, is simply listening to your customers. And I like you added a couple bullet points to this when you said not only in real life, but using the data to identify opportunities for a meaningful touch point as well. Gabe, I actually was just talking to someone this week, and I said, oh yeah, I host the podcast with my colleague Gabe. And one thing about Gabe and I is I feel like we both geek out on data, which is I think it's very important in the industry we work in because yes, not only in real life, but using the data to back some of those decisions we make, I think is a great way to use our systems and our solutions today.
Yeah, 100%. Well, going to you made that great comment about, being out in the community, right? That's the listening in real life. When you're having that conversation, that intimate conversation with a customer that's face to face, that's a great opportunity to really actively listen and understand what the needs are of that customer. And that's a really meaningful touch point. That doesn't scale. Leveraging the data to find those opportunities for meaningful touch points, that is what scales. And so if we're thinking about how we change this mindset of, okay, we spent a bunch of time and money at the beginning of the relationship, we acquired this customer, and then we pray to God that we never hear from them again, and we're just going to extract money out of their bank account forever until they decide to leave us. That is not a recipe for success in our current state of the competitive landscape that exists right now in the broadband business. And so it's looking at those data points. When is it? What's the anniversary? Are they giving you any indication that they're not having a very good experience? All of these different things to identify, go back to those 3 points we made earlier, Zach, getting new customers, but more importantly, keeping your customers and getting your customers to buy new things. That's where all of those data points can be so helpful.
I'm going to have a good laugh in about 5 minutes when I go check my email and I see I have something from Comma with like a $100 abandoned cart. Like, did you forget to check out message?
That would be hilarious.
If that
blow
happens,
up our whole
Gabe,
plan here.
I will call you immediately. But it's like I said, it's been 6 months, and here we are. But I will say, now I'm going to be thinking about this all weekend, so it's going to be very top of mind. But Gabe, that was a great episode. Of course, coming up here in a couple days, we'll be having our second ping episode, so definitely keep an eye out for that. I think we we covered one of my favorite apps. I'm not going to say which one it is.
No,
but
don't give it away. Make people listen.
yeah, no, you've got to listen. Well, it's funny because people are going to start to realize who's writing these episodes, because of course the first one was about crumble. Okay, well, that was, one of my favorite snack foods. What's my favorite app? Well, you're going to come and find out. I'll tell you right now, it's not TikTok. It's also not the Meta AI glasses app yet. Although, like I said, week 2 of that product, still very impressed. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, you might need to go back one episode.
Yes, go back one episode, and you can not only listen to Zack talk about the fun Meta AI glasses that he has, but also see them in real life, so to speak. So yeah, it's good times.
I have been waiting for you to tell me that you either bought a pair or you're thinking about it. I don't know what you have been doing this past week, but I could not give you a more positive review.
You really couldn't have. And I feel like it's honestly, the reason I haven't done it yet is because I feel like my wife is going to seriously judge me. And so I'm trying to figure out how I can work this into a have her not give me a ton of crap about buying them conversation.
Gabe, this is my advice to you as both the relationship expert and and podcast co-host. But they're designed so well that if you don't tell her they have AI or their smart glasses, she may not know until you start talking to your sunglasses. But
yeah, it's a really good point. I hadn't thought about that. Maybe I just buy them and not even tell her that they're AI related. So yeah, it's a really good point.
Well, let me know how that goes. This was another episode of Couples Therapy with Zack. But thank you, everyone, for tuning into Buffering. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast app and to share it with your friends and colleagues. For more insights and updates, be sure to connect with Gabe and I on LinkedIn. And don't forget, catch our next episode of Ping in a couple days.